and shove us in here. Are y'all coming? Come on. Well, it's a little late. I am persnickety. I am persnickety. You know me. Right here. Right here. Hi. Everything works great. How are you?
Wow.
Hey, well, good. Well, we'll start with time. Good morning.
Yeah, we can stick around.
Huh? I know. We might just have standing there normally.
We might. That'd be nice.
So I want to just tell you this. I'm really happy that you're here. This is the first of our series of our SME series.
So if this doesn't work, does that mean we're going to like cancel it?
No. We're going to keep trying until you people get it right. Yeah. And we're going to continue. And let me tell you why. Like it just keeps coming up over and over. How many like super experts we have in our company, and we have little silos of knowledge, and we've got to do a better job sharing it. And besides, I can't make up all this stuff too. I really am interested in having this SME series. It's kind of hard to coordinate, but we're just going to keep after it and keep having these sorts of things so that we all share in the learning. This is being recorded, and it may go out just as a recorded meeting in the learning management system. I'm not exactly sure how this will work. It's our very first one, but I will send a notice out when it gets posted or however that works. But anyway, I appreciate it, Craig, that you are the first one, and I think we're going to learn something new.
Good.
Okay?
So this is hopefully, and I would not consider myself an expert on this subject, but a little bit. So I'm going to share my knowledge, but this is actually an opportunity to try to get everybody up to speed on what a registered investment advisor is. That's our focus for today. And what I want to do is just explain what the concept is, what a registered investment advisor is. It's been, the acronym for it is RIA. So you hear the term registered investment advisor or RIA, you're really talking about the same thing, which is an acronym for it. And so I want to explain real briefly about what it is about, what it is, and how it differentiates itself between other advisors. So in the market, if you're doing investment, you'll hear a lot of people that will describe themselves as advisors. But there's a difference between what a registered investment advisor is and other types of advisors. So what we want to do here is talk about the difference between the registered investment advisor and other types of advisors. And then finally, just be able to address any questions that you may have on what this is and how it differentiates itself amongst other advisors. So first of all, I want to start off with like a little exercise. And what I want you to do is I want you to imagine that somehow you come have enough left over that you feel like you want to save it and invest it for some reason. You come up with a reason. But you kind of don't know what to do. And so what I want to do now is think about that for a second, but you don't know what to do. And so the question would be, who are you going to go talk to help you? You need some help. You realize you need help. Who are you going to talk to? So I'm going to make everybody answer here. And I'm going to start on this side, work my way around. Everybody gets to answer this question. So I'm going to start with Rachel. Who did you talk to?
My mother.
Your mother? Who did you talk to?
I was getting stuff that was so really good.
the top. Brandon Morris is actually he's an investment guy. Yeah. Okay. An RIA Smith Barnes. That's good. I'm gonna hold on to that. All right. Bo, financial planner, Catherine. Edward Jones. I'm going to write that one down. All right, Keith. Fidelity. Very good. So you're a never counselor. Awesome. Mark? Got a guy at Schwab. Schwab. Very good. It's Chuck, right? That's who you talk to? Chuck. Chuck. Christian. Edward Jones. You already got them. All right. Sean, USAA. USAA? Yeah. All right. Judge. I would send an RFP to a client. RFP to the client. Nice. I like that. Larry Day, Edward Jones. Love that. Let's see. I approach a successful friend to a friend, I caught friend, but what was that before friend? Someone who has the proven that he has. Okay. 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 A friend basically. Okay. For those that came late, you got a pool of money, you just coming through it, and you need some help with investing it. Who would you talk to? Sue.
I would have to get recommendations.
From who?
Well, Kristen and my brother-in-law.
What does your brother-in-law do?
He is a commercial real estate investor,
Okay.
and he just knows a lot of people.
Okay. Awesome. That's great. Fidelity?
Yeah, he mentioned all that.
With that?
He mentioned all that stuff and all that.
Wonderful. Yeah. Excellent. Tina?
I call Vanguard.
Vanguard. Okay. Very good. That's another name. So what? Who's the Gestapo? What is Christian saying everybody needs? We're going to get into that. We'll get into that a little bit later. So, I'm not going to go all around again, but I want to, for those of you that didn't name a company that you either named a friend or a relative or somebody like that, if you didn't name a company and you went to that person and you said, hey, I have some money I need to invest it, what would you recommend I do? And that person said something like, well, why don't you take it to WinStar and just gamble? Just do it. Or they said something like, there's a really good investment in alpaca farms that I can tell you about. If there's something that you heard, you said, that just doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound like a good use of my money. That doesn't sound like something I really want to be in. And so you decided you couldn't use your friend for whatever reason. It just didn't make sense. It just didn't sound right. What would you then do? Who would you talk to? I can't remember who said that, but you're going to have to help me with that. So if you couldn't use your friend, you couldn't use your relative, who would you use? A company. So there's a good list up here. Do any other names come to mind of companies that are in this business that invest for a living that you would want to consider? Merrill Lynch. All right. Anybody else? Mark Patton. Does everyone know who Mark Patton is?
Yeah.
Huh? Yeah, none of you mentioned him, but does everyone know who he is? That's good. because I want to talk about him later. Ameriprise, very good. E-Trade, yeah. If babies could do it, why can't we, right? Goldman Sachs, yes, good one. Betterment, Wells Fargo. Oh, yes, very good. Wells Fargo? Wells Fargo. Liberty Mutual. Liberty. Wealthfront and Betterment. I think this is a good enough list. This is good. I want to add your client list, because that's actually a pretty good list too. I'm just going to say clients. All right, that's a good list. So what we're going to do later is, so there's a list of names, and we're going to kind of go through this a little bit later after we kind of talk about what a registered investment advisor is and what the difference is. And we're going to go back to these names, and we're going to see if you can tell which is which. And it's actually not going to be very clear cut, but we can kind of make some deductions about what it is that each of these firms really are. Are they registered investment advisors or are they not? And some of them are both. So that's a little bit, it's going to be a little bit tricky from that standpoint, but there's a little bit more of what their history, what their reputation is, and we can at least give you a little bit of guidance as to what they primarily do. All right. So let's first of all talk about what a registered investment advisor is. And this is one of those names that to me is a very good indication of what they are. It actually is very well spelled out within the name itself. So let's start at the end here. So advisor means this is a person that is giving advice to you. All right? So we go through a lot of different people when we need advice on certain matters. And this is a person that you can go to get advice. Okay? What is this advice going to be on? Well, it's going to be advice on your financial investments. Now, what you're going to find is actually a registered investment advisor can advise you on a lot of other things beyond just how to invest your money. They can talk to you about insurance. They can talk to you about estate planning. They can talk to you about taxes. They actually have a lot of different areas that they can cover with you, but it's all about your overall wealth picture is what they're going to give you is advice on. So they're not going to give you advice on what restaurants to go to, although some could do that. But that isn't really what you're really hiring them to do. They'll be glad to do that, but what you're really paying them to do is to actually give you advice on your wealth. Okay? So they're going to give you advice on your wealth. And then the first word is registered just means that they have actually registered with an authority. And we'll talk about what that is later on. But they are registered with an authority and have said that by this registration that they are giving particular advice on financial investments in a certain way. And we're going to talk a little bit more details about what that's like. So, as the name says, they're giving advice on your wealth, and they've been registered with an authority, and that registration is on record. And as a result of that registration, they are saying that they're going to do that in a certain way. Okay? And so I'm going to show you now just a really quick video here. And what this is trying to show you is differentiating between what a registered investment advisor does compared to a broker. So a broker is another person who will tell you, yeah, we give advice too on financial investments. But their approach is way different than, say, what a registered investment advisor does. And hopefully this is going to kind of paint the picture here of what the difference is and what the registered investment advisor is actually providing for you. And it's using a different analogy, so just try to follow along and see if this works.
And what about a robo-advisor?
Well, let's get into that a little bit later. We'll get into that though. All right. So I got to do this. And let's do this. We need a faster moving, yeah, it's a good build-up. So in this example, fiduciary, that's another term we're going to get into after this, but fiduciary is actually just another way that registered investment advisors are referred to, because it's the approach that they take in terms of how they look at your wealth. Just real quick, this probably took longer to put the screen down to actually show this video. And I'm going to, I don't have very good speakers here. Oh, no.
And there's Mikey, and these guys know more about meat and more about animals and more about cooking the meat than any of us will ever learn. And so you walk in, you say, "Oh, it's barbecue this weekend, right? What do you like?" And Luke goes to, the big racks and stuff he has underneath the glass, and he goes, the veal chops, just in from Argentina, they are the bomb. And you go, "Veal, oh, I like veal. What do you got on skirt steak?" "Oh, we got some great skirt steak. Just came in yesterday from Montana. Skirt steak is one of my favorite, marinated up a little bit. It's fantastic." Lou will never say to you, "Elliot, it's a little long on the meat here, big guy. Your cholesterol is getting high. Why don't you go down to the fishmonger a couple blocks and have a nice piece of salmon?" Right? He'll never do that. Why? His job is to sell me meat, and I go in, actually the same way I go into the Toyota dealership, select Toyotas, and I trust the salesman to sell me a good product if I trust him. And the fact that he's got my interest at heart vis-a-vis my expectations for selling me that thing. By the same token, when I go to see a dietitian, I know she's going to look at all of my labs, she's going to take all the measurements, she's going to run all of her analysis, and she's going to absolutely give me her best thinking on what's best for me. If she's a vegetarian or a meat lover, likes this, likes that, if she thinks I should be doing something differently, even if it's not good for her, she's going to give me an opinion that's for my interest. So what's the difference between a fiduciary and the brokers? Well, these are dietitians, these are butchers. That's simple. Brokers are butchers selling product. Fiduciaries are dietitians looking after your health. The problem is most people think that their butcher is a dietitian. So when one of your moms or dads or friends calls the builder, says, "No, I got $200,000. I sold a little piece of property, or I got some inheritance. What should I do with it?" They're going in thinking they're talking to a dietitian, and they're really talking to the butcher.
All right. Hopefully you guys, could you hear that in the back? Is that pretty? Could you? Okay. Great.
We can post that link as well.
Perfect. So the analogy that was drawn there was comparing, in that example, the registered investment advisor is the dietitian, and the broker is the meat market person. And so did that make sense in terms of trying to kind of compare the difference between the two? One is selling product. So when you go to the meat market, you're just there to buy a product, and that's the equivalent of what you do when you go to a broker. A registered investment advisor was the analogy used with a dietitian. So when you go to the dietitian, they're looking at your overall health. They're going to recommend to you things that are going to be good for you and your overall. It's more customized to you as a person, and it's something that they're going to they're looking at the overall picture for you. The other thing I like to use is analogy, and it really isn't that one's better than the other. The important thing is that you just understand the difference, and that you understand what you're getting into when you're talking to a person that you would be potentially considering investing money for you. And there are situations where you want to use one or the other. it's important to just understand what it is that you're getting into. I like to use this analogy a lot also is when you're going to buy a house. Now, I mean, some of you in this room have bought a house, some of you haven't, but when you go to buy a house, you may go and search out a real estate agent, and this person takes you around and shows you a lot of different houses, and then you pick the one you want, and you work with this agent to put an offer in, and then they're going in and they're negotiating for you, and they're getting an offer back. But at the end of the day, who is the person that's paying the agent? The seller is always going to pay the agent. So you may think that they're really working for you, and I'm not trying to say that they're being devious on this. They're doing what they're, and they're very good agents out there. This isn't a slight against agents. I'm just saying that it's important to understand that the agent that you have selected and is taking around and showing you the homes and is negotiating for you is actually getting paid by the seller. And it's really good to understand that when you're out there, because I think a lot of people think that the agent is really representing the buyer in this case if you selected them. And that's not really the case. Even though you may have selected them, you may have found them, and I'm not saying they're trying to rip you off or anything like that. I'm just saying I think it's important that you understand that when you're in these kinds of transactions, who is the person or how is this person getting compensated for the services that they are providing you. It's very important just to understand that. And so that's what's really good about this, comparing a registered investment advisor to a broker. So let's talk, I've got a few more details here that kind of help distinguish the difference. And these aren't all, this is a very simplified matrix here, but it's a good way to just kind of look at this in looking at the difference. So the first thing is we want to talk about role. If you're talking with a broker, in general what they're going to do is they are just going to recommend products or things that you should buy. They and it is ultimately up to you though to make the decision whether you really want to purchase this or not. They don't really buy stuff on your behalf. They just make recommendations to you, and then you get the ultimate decision about whether you really want to purchase it or not. So that's what a broker is going to do. In a registered investment advisor, you actually have given them the authority to make trades in your behalf. So they don't have to necessarily come to you and ask you permission every time they want to make a trade. They'll just do it for you. Again, it's just a matter of knowing what are you purchasing when you work with these people. To further complicate it, the way it works today, and this may be changing, they actually have a broker typically has a different governing authority than what the registered investment advisor does. There's an organization whose acronym is FINRA, and you just hear it called FINRA. I can't even, it means something, but I can't, if someone wants to look up what the acronym means, you can look it up. The FINRA is actually a group of, it's basically self-regulating. It's not a government body. It's basically run by a group of brokers. And they have these rules, and you're expected to follow these rules to be part of FINRA. They'll exact fines if you don't follow the rules. But it's basically this self-regulating body that basically is in charge of the rules in terms of what brokers can and can't do.
Financial industry regulatory authority.
There you go. So they're doing it themselves, basically. They're regulating themselves. And the RIA, the governing body, is the Securities and Exchange Commission. So remember when I talked about registered earlier? These are registered investment advisors are registered with the SEC. That's their governing body. The SEC is in charge. They'll come in, they'll audit them, they'll make sure they're following the right guidelines. If they find something wrong, they'll be the ones that'll fine them. That's the governing body. So they have two different governing bodies. Now, there's a lot of you'll hear a lot of talk if you watch some of the politics that are going on in Washington right now. They're actually trying to create a uniform standard that would apply to both sides of this. Hasn't happened yet. There's some turmoil about whether that'll happen or not, but That's basically one of the things that you may hear from time to time, stories in the media about the different governing bodies. But anyway, right now, the way they exist today, you have two different regulatory authorities. One's self-regulating, one's a government agency that does the regulations for the two sides. Probably the biggest, in terms of the regulations themselves, the biggest thing that you need to be aware of in terms of the difference between a broker and a registered investment advisor is a broker is only accountable for providing an investment that's suitable to the investor. And suitable just means that they have the right to sell it to that person. They are not held to the same standard as a registered investment advisor. A registered investment advisor is held to what's called a fiduciary standard. And a fiduciary standard, if you were to simplify that, what that really means is that they're going to make recommendations that are to the benefit of the investor. They're responsible for making recommendations that are going to be in the best interest. It doesn't matter whether it benefits the person that's the advisor or not. It does not matter. They cannot make. They are held to this regulation that they have to make investments. They have to make recommendations that are to the benefit of the investor. So they'll want to know a lot more about your picture. When do you want to retire? Do you want to fund college? When do you what other sources of money do you have? They want to know a lot more information about you so that they can make sure that they can provide the best recommendation for you. That's what a registered investment is held to. It's held to, that's part of what they sign up for when they get registered, is that they are going to provide that service, that fiduciary standard, that they're going to provide that to anybody any of their customers. A broker, all they have to do is just basically prove that the investment was suitable to that person and they could sell it. And so it's a much lower standard. They don't have to be held to the standard that this is in the best interest of that person. And you'll see a lot of stories that are out there now of, for example, brokers selling these exotic investments to 85-year-old people that have high fees and are really not something that would be suitable for that kind of a person. But there is and then there are good brokers out there that do a lot of good recommendations and want to hold themselves to a fiduciary standard, but you have to, they're not held to the same standards that a registered investment advisor is. That's just the plain and simple of it. Now, there are good ones out there that will personally want to take that kind of responsibility. So there's nothing wrong with that. They'll do that. But they are not, by the governing authority, they're not held to that standard just because of the fact that they've been registered. Make sense? Yes.
On the fiduciary side, how do you prove that a particular recommendation satisfies that it's in the best interest of the investor?
You don't have to prove it. It's just that if they come in and audit you, you have to prove it to the auditors.
Right.
Yeah, it's a yeah.
Yeah.
They have to show that they went and did a profile of your stuff. They did a whole financial plan for you. They have to show that they did that in preparation of providing you a recommendation.
Then we have an investment policy statement.
Yes.
They have to follow your investment policy statement.
Yes.
So they have to have the statement, they have to follow the statement, they have to,
it's the whole process in which they engage you. They have to document that, and they would have to show if anybody came in and audited them, they'd have to show that they met with you personally and that they talked with you about what your objectives were and your goals and what you wanted to achieve with the money. They'd have to prove that. In terms of proving it, they'd have to show that they actually did that with you. Instead of you just walking up the street and you're saying, oh, you're Mark, I think you need this, this, and this, and not even really asking you any questions.
And you know your clients that has your financial information there too, from a risk perspective, that they actually put together in order to make sure that
yes.
overextending it.
Yes, yes, that's true. Awesome. So, held to suitability standard or fiduciary standard. Then the last thing that I have to look at the difference between the two. A broker is going to be paid based on the amount of trades that they do. So they get paid by the trade. Okay? A registered investment advisor is going to get paid by the value of the account every year. So they're not incented to make a lot of trades. They're typically there to, they typically will come in, look at an investment allocation, recommend an allocation to you, and they're trying to take themselves out of trying to be influenced by the amount of trade that you make in your account. They're there to basically just make that, again, it's the overall picture, and they're going to get paid by the amount that they can grow your overall pool, not by individual trades that they make to your account. All right, so let me stop there for a second and take questions. Let's stop here. This is going to get a little bit trickier in a second, but let's get these basics down. Yeah.
Relative to the butcher dietitian argument, think about it. If you went to the butcher and said, I want to, find out. I'm hungry. I want to eat.
Yeah.
It's suitable for them to say, I have meat here that you can eat.
Yeah.
Whereas if you went to the dietitian and said, I'm hungry. I want to know what my diet, what I want to eat. They say, well, let's think about, all of your health parameters and how many calories you need to intake, and I'm going to give you a plan of different things to eat. Yeah, and maybe the pork, whatever the butcher wants to tell you is not within your best interest overall. So it would be suitable for one transaction. Yeah, it's okay for you to have that one time, but if all you ate was that, it wouldn't be good for your overall health. So there's some parallel there to the analogy that you can think through. That they're not making you a bad recommendation saying, here, buy this meat.
No. That's something to sell.
Yeah, they just have something to sell to you. Yeah. And you very well may want it, and that's the best option for you to go and to buy that pinpoint purchase.
Sure.
Versus, but it's important to know, what are you wanting to get? Are you wanting to get this overall plan and picture, or are you really going to someone trying to get a particular product or commodity or investment vehicle, and you need to get that, and that's the best way for you to get it.
Yeah. And so it is, again, just to reiterate, it's not that either one of these is good or bad, or you want to go to one or the other. These actually, both of these have good purposes for their in the investment industry. What I would say is that what happens a lot is people go to this broker, and brokers actually, because they kind of caught on that it sounds a lot better to call yourself an advisor and not a broker. So they call themselves advisors. There's nothing to prevent them from doing that. And you may think you're talking to somebody who's really talking about your overall picture, but is really not either held to that regulation, or it isn't actually going to get compensated by how well your overall picture grows. It's really on a per trade basis. And you just need to make sure you understand that when you're talking to these people, and ask the question. Just ask the question, how are you compensated for this? It's you can ask it very easily.
And you might be going to talk about this in a little bit, because I get a little confused with some of our clients who I believe are broker-dealers and this whole advisor thing.
Okay. Well, that'll be next.
Okay.
Yeah.
You touched on the question. Can you explain the compensation? One being, like.
So, for example, I'll give you an example. So, if you went to a broker and the broker said, "I think you should buy 100 shares of General Motors stock." Well, let's take General Electric right now. They just were in the news. They're selling off their whole financial services division. So you go to some guy, a broker, and you say, "Hey, I saw that GE selling off their financial services division. They're going to get a lot of money for that. This is a good investment." Broker's going to say, do a little bit of research for you, come back and say, "Yeah, I think that's a great investment. You ought to buy some of that. Let's buy 100 shares." They're going to get paid basically on the trade based on the number of shares. They have a rate schedule, but it's basically number of shares and there's a rate. Sometimes it's a flat fee. It just varies amongst the broker, but they're going to get paid for actually executing the trade for you to buy the 100 shares of GE.
Are they ever compensated by the actual asset?
In the mutual funds, yeah, they can get. If we start talking about you going by a fund, there's a fee called the 12B1 fee. They can get compensated for a 12B1 fee back also. So they can get paid by the fund companies when they recommend funds. They can get paid by the fund company to make the recommendation for certain funds. You can look at that as a conflict of interest, but it's good for you to know that up front. That is, they can make recommendations, and then the fund company can pay them back for making a recommendation for their funds.
It's kind of like a pharmaceutical company.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. I mean,
Sure, doctors.
commission product.
Yeah.
I was going to say, well, add on to that, they also get a commission on a lot of cases that mutual funds is very lucrative.
Yes.
Especially if it's a fund and
Yes.
commission. They get paid that immediately.
Mhm.
It's like so the easiest barrier for a broker, so in order to be a broker in RA, you have to have licenses, right?
Yeah.
6 and 63, Series 6 and 63,
Yeah.
are the minimum requirements to be a broker.
Yeah.
You can earn those. Anybody in the room can earn that this weekend.
Sure.
And after you take the 6 and 63, you're qualified to sell mutual funds through a broker dealer.
Yeah.
And get associated with it.
Yeah.
So I could recommend a high value commission product to you next week if I took that 6 and 63 today.
Yeah.
So equities against other Series 7.
Yeah.
Which means, and it's a higher bar of an exam to get to do a Series 7. And so essentially there's more experience required to do that.
So in general, just if you kind of were to sum that all up, that broker's compensation is going to be completely driven by the amount of trades that they're able to generate. Could be high fee funds, could be low fees, could be just stocks, whatever. But their compensation level is based on trades.
So is that true of Hilliard Lyons Brothers?
Yes.
It is. Those financial advisors.
Well, they haven't. Well, no, actually, they had an RIA. They shut it down. But yeah, all those guys are brokers.
Okay, so they're.
Are there any RIAs there?
Well,
No.
I think it's such a hybrid.
Well, we'll get to that. Yeah.
All right. I just love it so much.
So I would say, like Hilliard Lyons broker dealer, and I came from a broker dealer, HC Best in Irving. And our deal was to sign up with companies. But we wanted to get CPAs because CPAs had plans. Plans need IRA. So why not? It'd be easy to just get him a 6 and 63, and then he could sell those mutual funds to his funds. And we had mutual fund partners, which paid us company one fees on the
Sure.
back side. Didn't make it a bad thing, but what it did is that there wasn't a full financial plan done before there was a transaction.
So you touched upon a really great thing. So I'm very simplifying this, broker or RIA, but then it really gets kind of complicated because you've got people, CPAs can get their license and they're offered to sell that. Many of you maybe work with insurance agents. Insurance agents, a lot of them have gotten their brokerage licenses and can sell products also.
Or insurance products that look like it.
Yes. So I'm giving you a very simplified view here, but this thing starts to get really complicated. That's why it's important. I'm just giving you the basics, and you can actually, hopefully this arms you when you go out. You just got to ask the question, how are you being compensated for this particular service?
Yeah, and the reason I was raising that is the experience is when you ask them, they say, I'm paid based on when you post the trade.
Yeah.
And you have to dig into that. Because, yes, that a part of the transaction fee you are paying as the client.
Yes.
But there's all this other that you have to really dig into because they will try to draw the shade between really how they're being compensated versus the fiduciary of an RIA.
Yeah.
And
And they have to publish how they're getting paid. They can't sit there and say, I don't, if they sit there and tell you oh, don't worry about that, I don't have to tell, I'd walk out. You have a right to know, and they actually have to divulge that to you. If they're not willing to, then you don't need to.
One thing you might hear from a broker is, well, my advice is free. You know,
Yeah.
Come and meet with me. You don't have to pay me
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
Until you do something.
Right.
And so that's one.
That's a good flag. That's a flag. But
That sounds appealing, but what that
Yeah.
really means is they're going to get paid based on what they tell you.
Yeah.
But that being said, you can go and talk to them, get their advice, and you don't mind, and you haven't paid anything.
And that, I really like what you said about going back to the butcher and dietitian, and that I've used this example before, but when my dad died, he really liked the butcher approach. I want to go buy this. I want to go buy this. My mother was so insulted, really insulted. She wanted somebody to take care of her. Yeah. And it was a really bad thing for her. But for my dad, he knew what he wanted to buy.
That to me is just to be educated and know what you're getting. It isn't that you can pick and choose how you really want to conduct this service. And I would say that both models have their merit.
That's a good idea. I said it was financial plan.
Yeah.
I want to go get the plan,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't want to pay on the value of the account. Because that value, what I'd like to do is go see the dietitian, and then based on that recommendation, go to the butcher, go to the fishmonger, go to the different people.
And I didn't even address that. So the financial planner is another one. Another way you can do that. They can give you a plan. They're usually charging you a flat fee for that, and then you figure out how you want to implement the plan. You don't have to implement the plan through them at all. That's called a financial planner, which is again another avenue that you can do that kind of can give you the picture, but isn't utilizing them to do the actual implementation of it.
One of at the event that Greg and I were at this week, one of the former CEO or chairman of Morningstar basically said, what would he do? And he said, he's got millions, like, let's say $20 million.
Yeah.
So he said, I would go hire a financial planner and pay them a flat fee, which would probably be a couple $1,000.
Yeah.
Meet with me and deliver to me a plan.
Yeah.
And then I go implement it.
Yeah.
Because the other alternative is to go to an RIA. You typically charge 1% of your assets every year.
Yeah.
It's a typical fee.
Yeah.
So to his point, I would be paying. He made the correlation. If I did that, I'd be paying 1%. If I went and bought a $5,000 financial plan from a financial planner, that's like 0.0001% of his wealth.
But the financial plan is, so I agree.
But then you'd have to go and execute it himself through a broker, or maybe an RIA,
Right.
or to do it on E-Trade itself.
And dependent on the type of person, he's probably a pretty strong type A. But you have to continue to update your plan.
Yeah.
So you cannot utilize a plan of when you were 20 years old to where you are 50.
Yeah. Sure.
That's where the RIA brings value.
Yes.
So there's
It's
a
more of
blend.
a
How much do you want to monitor it?
endpoint, someone to take care of me.
Yeah. The RIA is providing a very good service from a standpoint of monitoring that over time. When significant life events happen, you have a new child, and you want to set up a 529 plan. If you have if you need to get wills done, if you need to get insurance done, the RIA can kind of look at your overall picture and help you make sure that you're addressing your issues that come up in your life.
I did that with our Edward Jones agent. My dad passing, I did receive inheritance. I asked my agent, should I pay my mortgage off or, invest? And he, looking back, he was looking out for me in the sense that he wasn't trying to sell me something because now he knew that I had inheritance money in my hand to do with. He said, pay off your mortgage. I can take that or leave it, but that's advice.
Sure, good point. Yeah.
The other point I think on the RIA also is, you're paying attention to a lot of service. If he's providing a good service, then maybe that's the right fit for you, right? If he's not, you can always move off that and move to the other model.
Sure.
That's a good point. That in that example, just because
So let's try to see if we can figure out which one of these are brokers and which one of these are RIAs. And you can ask like maybe one question. If you don't know, let's ask one question. Actually, the first thing I want to mention before we do this is there is this other complicating thing where a registered investment advisor can also be a broker dealer. And the term that is called is being duly registered. So look out for that term when you see that out there. When you see that and you're talking with somebody that, they can say, well, I'm a registered investment advisor. But you can ask the question, well, who's the broker? And if they're the broker also, just remember that they're getting paid for both then. Okay? So
One-stop shop.
it's a one-stop. So again, it's not that that's good or bad, but just make sure you ask that question as to who, or you can say who does your trades for you. Who's your, you got to make sure that if they are representing themselves as an RIA, that you determine if you're comfortable with the fact that they're executing the trade too, because that just means they're benefiting both sides of that.
And that would be like Sendero?
Well, we'll talk about Sendero in a second. All right, so the first one I actually want to start with, then we'll go through the rest here, is Mark Patton. What do you think Mark Patton is?
Duly. All right.
Why?
executing, giving up fiduciary responsibility to do trade.
He doesn't do trade.
He doesn't do the trade.
He makes recommendations for how you should manage your portfolio.
He's a registered investment advisor. And for those of you that want to know, the big reason is he actually gets paid on the size of the 401k assets. We're not paying him by the number of trades that he generates. We're paying him by how big the plan grows. So he's an RIA. Pretty straightforward. I don't even think he's duly registered. I think Mid-Atlantic or Atlantic. Mid-Atlantic is our broker. For those if you want to know that, that's the name of the brokerage is Mid-Atlantic. So he doesn't get paid for any of the trades that he recommends. He's getting paid for the overall growth and on his model.
But what's confusing is not everyone who is utilizing the 401 has not gone through a planning phase with Mark, and that's why
I understand. I want to say, so if you are interested in that kind of solution now, there is an option for you there that he can put together a really good plan for you. And he is not compensated in one shape or form in the number of trades that you do. You just get paid on the overall size of the plan. That's it. So it's important because all you guys have access to him. So if you're interested in that, that's one option for you. All right, so I'm going to start. I'll start over here. TD Ameritrade, what do you think they are? Broker dealers. Primarily, they are. I think they do have a. I think they have an RIA farm, but majority of what you're doing, what you see online, that's all brokerage, straight brokerage.
So you're saying broker, someone who can buy, make trades. What's the use of the word dealer then? What's that? Broker.
Actually, a broker and a dealer are actually two different terms, and it has to do with one can put in the trade and the other one actually executes it. So it's both. They're actually two different terms. They just typically get combined.
The broker-dealer buys and sells on behalf of firms and can buy and sell on behalf of an individual.
Yeah.
Broker can only buy and sell on behalf of an individual.
There you go.
Okay, thank you.
There's the expert. You should be doing this class.
I knew one thing.
All right, so the TD Ameritrade, pretty straightforward. That's a brokerage company. Wells Fargo. They kind of do both. But their biggest, they're actually known as, they're one of the top 4 wirehouses. So what is a wirehouse? Another term that you might hear. Brokers, yeah, that's broker. But then you have an RIA. I mean, and it isn't that clear cut. I'm just saying that this is kind of like, what are they primarily known for? Wells Fargo Advisors. Yeah. You run into Wells Fargo Advisors, you'll see they have shops up all over town. Yep. They'll be in the bank branches. They'll be, if you're a Wells Fargo customer and you happen to walk into the branch, they'll typically have a little office there that will say Wells Fargo Advisors above it that you can kind of go in there and do. You can start an investment account with them. With the brokers. Liberty Mutual, that's a good one. Because Liberty Mutual is actually an insurance company.
RIA.
Broker. They're selling Liberty Mutual. Yeah, they're primarily brokerage. I don't know of any RIA arms that they have. They're brokerage. All right, Wealthfront. What is Wealthfront? Does anyone know what Wealthfront is? Wealthfront is actually a completely online experience. You don't, I can't remember. I don't think you talk. You might have a person that calls themselves an advisor, but you don't really talk to them. You do your whole. They're really good. They aggregate your data for you. They've had some really nice reports. They really are a very good solution, but it's all online. It's primarily online. It's called, and you maybe heard the term a robo-advisor. That's what they are. They're a robo-advisor. They are a broker. They're an RIA.
That's what I was saying.
They get compensated based on, they get compensated based on that.
If you look up the website here and you'll see what the pricing is. But that's where you want to look. You want to look at how they're getting paid, and it's by asset, I believe.
Because it's a blend. They have a blend.
I don't think so. Check it.
You said robo or a robo?
Robo, as in robot. Yeah. Robo-advisor is basically an automated advisor. You put the money in, you answer. You basically go in and, when I told you the part about an advisor will sit down with you and ask you all these questions. Well, this is, they'll do this, but it's all online. You don't talk to a person. Now, they have different flavors of this. Sometimes you'll fill out all the profile and you might talk to a person for like an hour. There's a firm called Edelman that will spend some time with you. There's different flavors of it, but a firm like Wealthfront, it's just basically primarily an online experience. You may have a person that actually puts the plan together for you, but you're basically putting in all your information online. You give them access to your for them to aggregate everything for you, and they come up and they give you a plan, and then they do the investment for you. You say, yeah, I want to do that. And then you get paid, and it's an RIA because you get paid. You're getting paid by the size of your account, not by the trades that they do. All right, Betterment. Anyone know that? They're another online version, similar to Wealthfront. They're an RIA, yeah. We'll come back to clients since we've got time for that. Merrill Lynch. What do you think Merrill Lynch is? Huh? They're a wirehouse too. They're another one of the top 4. They are primarily a broker. They might have an RIA arm. I'm not sure, but they're primarily a broker. Mark Patton talked about Ameriprise. A little bit mostly broker. Mostly, they're primarily known as a brokerage, but they have a little bit of an RIA arm. All these brokers are trying to compete by starting up their own RIA arm. So it isn't a pure brokerage, but that's the majority of the business that they're doing is brokerage. E-Trade, broker, this is self-directed, so you don't even work with a broker. You're just basically doing it yourself. They're just placing the trades for you. And that's Ameritrade has that kind of retail Ameritrade. The retail Ameritrade is the same thing. You're not really talking with a broker. They're technically the broker, but it's really your direction itself. It's called self-directed. Goldman Sachs. Yeah. Huh? Yeah, this one is actually probably a broker. These guys are actually known as an investment banker. They're actually doing, I don't know if anybody really uses them for investments. These guys are basically doing company mergers and acquisitions and things like that. They're known as an investment banker. They do, but they're doing like really exotic stuff. Yeah, I don't. Work with them, you got a lot of fun. There's good eyes. So, the Smith Barney, and you're sure that it's an RIA?
No, I'm not sure.
Yeah, okay. Smith Barney is actually a broker more often than not. Now, again, they can have an RIA arm, so you might be working with an RIA. But what you need to do is find out how they're getting compensated. Because you may find out they're broke. And not that it's bad. Not that it's bad. I'm just saying it's good for you to know that.
Yeah, I think he is, or his will prove it, but I don't know why.
They're paid on the size of your account?
Yeah.
Or the trades that they do?
I think the size of your account.
Okay. Well, then that would be a good sign.
95% sure.
Okay. Edward Jones. They're primarily, though, a broker, by the way, but
Well,
again. But they can have RIA arms. They can have one. What do you think about Edward Jones? Broker. Yeah, primarily. Yep. Fidelity. They do both, but they're primarily known as a broker. That's their big business. They're selling funds. They're primarily brokers. If you're doing anything retail with them, they actually do have an RIA arm, but chances are, if you're working with Fidelity, you're working with the brokerage side.
And also what you do directly.
Self-directed. Yep. Self-directed. Yep. What about Schwab? Yep. They kind of do both, but they're primarily, the way they started was brokerage. Over the years, they started an RIA. The interesting thing is they started out as a brokerage, then they started an RIA. Now the biggest portion of their revenue comes from actually providing services and back office systems to other RIAs. And so that actually has surpassed what they've even done in the past from a brokerage standpoint. So that's they've kind of morphed over the ages. But they're primarily known as brokerage. USAA, I really don't know. I'm assuming they're brokerage, but okay.
A lot of E-Trade like solutions.
Okay. And last one was Vanguard. They're kind of both, but I would primarily place them as a brokerage. Yeah, they're a fund company, but again, you're placing they have an RIA, but again, it's pretty small in comparison to the rest of the things you do. If you go and invest directly with Vanguard, chances are you're working with the brokerage type of relationship, because they're just getting paid. They're getting paid to do the trades. Now the funds, it's a little bit tricky because you do pay a fee for your funds, but that's not for them to manage the overall allocation, for them to oversee all that. It's really just you're really just paying for them to have that. You're just paying to have that investment. So I would say primarily a brokerage type relationship.
I did check. Wealthfront is an SEC registered investment advisor. I was wrong. One thing to note, though, is if you have a brokerage account of where you are paying fees based on your account value, you still need to do the research to see who is the governing body, because you have less control if you have to ever litigate.
Yeah.
So like in the case of somebody here said, hey, I'm paying fees on my dollar value, but they're self-regulated through FINRA. I mean, you have less control as the investor to go at them versus using the SEC. So these firms, on the whole, are good, but there are ways that you use wording and trickiness that you have to do the research.
If you ever look at the disclosures, it's almost mind-numbing. But if you can kind of get the basics down, and then you can kind of maybe ask a few questions, and it ought to give you a pretty good generality of what that is. But yeah, that's good, like you said.
I wanted to say one other thing about brokers. I think we kind of said buyer beware.
Yeah.
And what I would say is the company that a broker, an individual broker, is associated with is really their methodology. They build the tools, the compliance rules, and develop the investment models for clients that come in for their services. Edward Jones, the individuals that work at Edward Jones are associated with that company as a broker. So it's the methodology that Edward Jones uses and requires their brokers to use is what you're interested in. They may have a very good financial review and planning process.
Oh yeah.
The broker is just the executor of that and the receiver of part of that commission. Edward Jones received the other part.
Yeah.
Maybe the Edward Jones took 30 and the broker took 70% of that commission. So those companies are still fine. They've been around for years.
Oh yeah.
If these were bad companies, they wouldn't be in business. They do a good job for people. So
they do.
The company you're looking for, and they are required to keep their broker in line and in compliance with their rules.
Sure.
So I feel like
and I would also make the statement that if you were to look at the overall, all the money that's ever invested in everybody's retirement investment accounts and all of that, while the trend is shifting a little bit more to an RIA, right now it overwhelmingly is invested through brokerage. It's the brokerage that has the money, the overwhelming majority of the money today. It's maybe changing. Now, there's these predictions that it's all going to shift over to RIA and that brokers are going to die off and they'll never be seen again. I think that's a little bit premature. I think that's a little, because I do think that the benefit in the broker, as long as you understand this, the benefit is you're only going to pay when you make a trade. So if you're a buy and hold investor and you kind of have an idea what your plan should be, and you're going to kind of monitor it yourself and adjust it and rebalance it as needed, there's no reason for you to use an RIA, because an RIA is going to get paid every year based on the value of your account. And so you got to kind of make that decision. Is this something I really want to give over to somebody else? Is this something I want to kind of keep on an eye on myself? If you're going to keep an eye on it yourself, a brokerage relationship is a great way to just kind of say, hey, I'll pay you to do the trades that I want to do or if you want to make recommendations to me, I'll decide if I want to do it or not. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just really, as I'm trying to say here, it's just really, you really want to know, you really want to kind of have an idea about what kind of relationship you want, and then make sure that you're lining yourself up with the right person that's going to help you in that relationship. So.
I had a young friend once that said, and after we talked about it, said it's kind of like a personal shopper. And it kind of is, because they go out and look for products that are great for you. And I think that's kind of they can do that. They can advise you and look for that. I think that's an interesting way to think about it, but not in the real world.
Yep. So we're over time. Did we want to, we can stop, or did you want to talk about some clients?
I'd love for us to just hit on the clients really quick, so it really means something.
Sure.
If you have to leave, go.
SunTrust.
So SunTrust has a brokerage called SunTrust Brokerage. Actually, you ought to ask the group, what do you think SunTrust is? All right. So they kind of do both. They have their RIA is called GenSpring. They do an RIA arm called the.
Do we provide services to them?
I think not GenSpring. No. We don't. Maybe that's it.
Yeah, that's probably a good question. What are trust companies? Most are trust companies. These are line trust. So
Yeah, what's a portfolio manager?
well,
They get paid on the assets.
they do, right? So I think
They're more like
generally would align them under RIAs, but they may not be registered with the SEC. They could be registered with state.
Yeah.
It depends on their charter and different things, but they're more like an RIA. They're mostly like an RIA.
Yeah, the thing with the trust is they have a very high, but they have a higher fiduciary standard, I'd say, than even an RIA has. They're like a RIA plus because they're managing it on behalf. They're the trustee. They have a trustee relationship, so they're, as it implies, they're managing on behalf of the beneficiaries of the trust.
Is that Westwood too?
Their trust, yep.
So like with SunTrust, there's the brokerage group which we have, then there's the SunTrust wealth management. Some people call them. That's our oldest SunTrust
The
relationship.
trust, yep. The trust.
You think of them as RIA. And there's GenSpring, which is an RIA that SunTrust owns, and it's used for free.
Now, what's interesting for me when I think about who you're going to SunTrust, they are very, very customer oriented, and you get a feeling of I'm taking care of you. I think for the most part.
So Hood Lions is primarily a brokerage, and then there's a little bit of a trust. They used to have an RIA, but I think that they don't have that anymore unless they start up another one. But they have a trust division also. That's a minor thing, but they're primarily a brokerage, regional brokerage. So that's how they're getting. Now, again, they're full service. They're probably providing very good advice to their clients, but they're a brokerage primarily.
Yeah, they're providing plans, they're taking your goals and putting them in the model. I like your matrix. You can't take the answer of one and dictate everything. Like, okay, because they are yes and this, then they must be a broker. It's like you have to take your whole matrix and determine, is it a broker or is it an RIA?
Yeah, the whole purpose of the matrix is just to kind of give you a picture about who governs them, how are they getting paid. It isn't really trying to say that brokers can't give good advice. I'm not trying to indicate that. I think brokers can give good advice. It's really kind of, I think it's good to understand though what it is that who's going to be the governing body. What do they really held to? A lot of them, brokers especially, will go way above and beyond the suitability standard, and they'll provide actual advice. They'll provide what's in the best interest of their customer, because they realize that if they recommend something that's going to be bad to the customer, that's not good for their business. and they have a servant heart, and they're trying to do what's best for their clients. There's a lot of good brokers out there. It's really more of just a good understanding, just to kind of know what kind of relationship you really have with them. And if you trust them and you like them and they're doing a good job for you, I'm not here to say, you know, get rid of them. And it's just good to kind of know those aspects of it.
There's two things I want you to touch on real quick. One is the narrow design. I think they're unique. And two, from a practical standpoint, talk about how we get why it's more difficult to get our records from RIA.
Sure. So Sendero, to answer your question, Sendero is neither an IRA or a broker. They're a consultant.
But that's like their own trade. They have people that.
Well, they're actually registered as SEC and
they're duly? Oh. Yeah. But they're not. They don't
have discretion.
Yeah.
So that's another factor.
Yeah.
So the way Sendero is paid,
yeah.
Right. They charge a consulting fee, the Sendero fee, and then they make a recommendation of 45 basis points.
Yeah.
What they charge to make the recommendation to the client. The way they implement it is through outside advisors.
Yeah.
They hire managers.
That's right.
Yeah.
And those managers are the ones that ultimately form the transaction.
They don't have discretion of, so they're not technically an RIA.
But they hire managers that I've heard them talk about not leaving trade or like.
No, the broker for them is right now it's J.P. Morgan.
Okay, that's right. Okay.
So that's
also RIA, like Fidelity, also the clearing.
Yeah.
An RIA that's independent would use Fidelity to execute the trade.
So we're using terms like clearinghouse, those aren't well known. So you've got to.
They might have to do this.
That might have to be the next one.
They might. There's a whole process of how things are happening in these label codes.
And what was your other question? I forgot.
Well, why have we not had more RIAs and for our customers, and why are their records harder to get?
Well, RIA, to answer that question, RIAs, typically what they'll do is they will allow their customers, for whatever reasons, if a customer is comfortable keeping their own custodian, which is another term we really haven't talked about, but a custodian is the one that actually holds the records and the securities, is the person that is the ultimate record keeper. A lot of times, high net worth individuals are very comfortable with their custodians, and RIA will not make you change that.
Or if they're recommending different products, they just reside different places.
It's really depends on the customer.
Yeah.
It's the customer's discretion, not really the product. So anyway, it's difficult. It's a little bit more difficult to get their records because they got that spread out in a lot of different places. Whereas if you come to, say, a SunTrust or PNC, they pretty much got them all in one place. If there are other assets out in other places, they really don't care. Maybe they'll do it, but it's not as big a deal to them to do that, to provide that. So that's why it's a little bit more difficult. If they're smaller, that's another factor too. And then the other thing I would say is an RIA is typically, as we have found in terms of selling our solution, it could be they're not big enough. And then the other thing is that they tend to want to, because they're not quite as big at times, they tend to want to combine a lot of solutions into one. So they're not looking for just a straight client reporting solution. They want to combine that with their trading and their portfolio research. They want to kind of get it all in one stop. And if you look at our Archon solution, that's our way of being able to pull together a lot of different things to be able to offer that out to the market. But in the past, it's been a little bit more difficult to try to just sell our component and then have them go get the other component. We're doing term we would use is the best of breed. It has been our legacy of what we sell. And a best of breed is something where this particular component we feel like is the best in the industry. But an RIA would would maybe potentially look at that and say, well, that's just way more than I need, and I need all these other things too, and I maybe don't need the best in the market. I just need something that's good enough to do what I do. But I want to combine it with other stuff. And I mean, they'll get real picky though. I mean, they're notorious for getting being very picky about what they want, but they don't want to pay for that best of breed approach. That's the way to describe it.
I like it. We're driving a hybrid car. We're selling SUVs, and some people want a sedan. And maybe not the right, analogy, but there's things about the solutions they're buying that they like. Like for our trust clients, and we've had historical, have a lot of clients. What we offer the integrations, particularly the trust accounting systems that we have, make us very attractive to them.
Right, and I guess my experience has been because records are moving places, if we didn't use an open finance or data aggregator, there's an expensive solution to go get records other places. That has not been good for RIA.
Yes.
We have a solution for it.
Yes.
Yes.
I love this, but so we can talk about it forever, but I know we've gone way over.
Yeah, I mean, why don't we end it? If you got questions after, I'll hang around for a little bit. Individual questions.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, wait. Oh, good. I was just going to say thank you for coming. I love having this. I think it was a great discussion. I'm looking forward to the next one. So do stay if you have questions for Craig.
Thank you. Thanks, Greg. Thank you.
What were you going to say, Joe?
You just doing trust company.
Okay, great. Okay. That'll be great. I like this. I don't know how the recording's going to go, but I'm glad we did it. I'm learning as I go.
Yeah, you going to do that?
Yeah.
Is that next on the list?
Yeah.
There you go. There you go, yeah.
Thank you, Craig.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate you doing that, Craig.
Sure.
Yeah, for some reason I'm